This is my kitchen table and also my filing system. Over much of the past 3 decades, I've been an investor. The highest calling of mankind, I've often thought, was private equity. And then I started interviewing.
While I watch your interviews, I know how to do some interviewing.
I've learned in doing my interviews how leaders make it to the top.
I asked him how much he wanted. He said $250. I said fine. I didn't negotiate with him, and I did no due diligence.
I have something I'd like to sell, and how they stay there. You don't feel inadequate now because being only the second wealthiest man in the world, is that right? Before COVID, I used to travel about 200 days a year and stayed in a lot of hotels. Now I'm beginning to travel again. So I'm always interested in what's going on in the hotel industry. And I had a chance to talk to the head of Hilton Hotels, Chris Nassetta, about how the industry was suffering during COVID, is coming back now, and how the industry is really changing itself to accommodate new demands from its customers. So, of all the industries in the United States, probably the lodging industry has been the most heavily impacted by COVID. You think that's a fair statement? You and the airline industry, probably.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe the cruise industry would probably top the list, but I think we'd be near the top of the list. Yeah, it's been a difficult couple of years, but things have improved by significant margin from where we were. We started out, in the first quarter of 2020 at 8 or 10% occupancy, which we've never experienced that kind of downdraft. Certainly in the almost 40 years I've been doing this. But at this point, we're not through COVID, and we're not back to where we were at the peaks of 2019. We're sort of like still 15 to 20% down and generally trending in a positive direction. My guess is when we get to the second, third quarter of next year, we will be back to peak levels of demand, similar to 19. What's been really interesting and been well documented, I guess, at this point, is the leisure business has been off the charts. If you look at demand for leisure broadly, the rates on leisure, they're already significantly higher than the peaks of 2019. The business segment and the group and the meetings and events segment, is on a slower recovery, which you'd expect, but building up some momentum.
So you think the worst is behind us for the time being?
I think the worst is definitely behind us. It's not a straight line up, but I think the worst is definitely behind us.
So as COVID was hitting the industry, you had to close hotels and lay people off. I assume that was extremely difficult.
It was. It's interesting, having done this for almost 40 years, we open hotels all the time. In fact, at this point, we're opening more than a hotel a day in the world. Still, even during COVID, we've been opening more than a hotel a day around the world. But we very rarely close hotels. It's something people don't focus on. When a hotel opens, it's open, most of them forever. Like, you open them up, they open their doors. They're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're it's sort of an epicenter of activity, and you rarely close them. You close them pretty much when you're going to tear them down for another use or build another hotel. So we are not very experienced at closing hotels, but we gain the experience. But the hard part,
did you close hotels? Actually,
we closed
hotels?
A significant percentage of the system. At some point in time, we had probably 1,500 of circa 7,000 hotels that were closed. But the difficult part, sort of, you asked in the question, was the people. Hotels were closing. It had a huge impact on our frontline team members in the sense of necessitating furloughs, reductions in force, both in the field and corporately. And so, as hard as it is to close the hotels, it was really the people side of it in the early stages of COVID was heart-wrenching.
So now that you're coming back, you have the opposite challenge. You have to open hotels and hire employees back. And it's been reported that it's hard to get employees to come back for the previous jobs, or to hire new people, you have to pay much more. So is that a big challenge for you in reopening hotels?
It is. At this point, almost all our hotels are open, but they're not fully staffed. The single biggest issue that we have is getting labor back into the hotels broadly, but particularly in certain roles like housekeeping and the culinary areas. And while we've seen some easing of that, over the last few months, we still have a ways to go. And so it's something we're working very hard on. It's a complicated issue. It's part, throughout throughout this has been health concerns. People don't want to go to places where other people are congregating. It's been significant issues on childcare, particularly when schools weren't open. People had nobody to take care of their children. There have been government policies that have obviously, compensated people, that were unemployed in ways that provided some disincentives. And you put, and then to be honest, there's some people that just have been reevaluating, life and what they want to do. And some of the, some of those folks have said, I'd rather go work in a warehouse rather than, clean rooms and other things. So it's a complex equation that's going to take a significant amount of time to sort of work through. We're a lot better off than we were even 3 months ago. And I think when we wake up over the next year, we'll be able to get, I'm hopeful, labor back, to be able to do what we do.
So one of the biggest concerns I assume the industry has is that people like me have gotten used to using Zoom, and therefore instead of traveling across the country or around the world, I can Zoom. Is that a big concern that people will say, look, the Zoom experience is actually pretty good and I don't need to travel? It's
not a big concern for me. I think, and I think the world's figuring this out. I mean, a year ago, I think people were saying, gosh, this works, it's so efficient, maybe I don't need to do the things that I was doing. I think a year later, as at least everybody I'm talking to has realized there are real limits to it. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's great technology, we use it, and it has facilitated our ability to continue to communicate during this crisis. But there is a unstoppable force that exists with humans, which is humans want to interact with humans. And that isn't just for a vacation. Humans need to and want to interact on business, to build partnerships, to innovate, to build culture. And they want to congregate. The meetings and events business, they want to network, they want to, to grow their business, to build relationships. And so I have no real worries. I mean, every time, we've sort of, as we've been recovering, if you look at, the minute people start to feel like we're through the crisis, the demand for meetings and events, which is the longest lead, skyrockets. People are dying to get out.
Let's talk about your own background, how you came to be the president and CEO. Where did you grow up?
I grew up right nearby here, Arlington, Virginia.
And you went to school in high school?
I went to public high school in Arlington, Yorktown High School, went to UVA. I ended up at the McIntire School of Commerce, undergraduate business school. Got out and decided I wanted to follow my father and uncle's footsteps and be in the real estate development business, and ended up working for one of the biggest developers and still a good friend today in the DC area, Oliver Carr. And my first job was actually ended up being a hotel, which was the Willard Hotel and Office Complex.
So Oliver Carr was an individual who built a very big real estate company in Washington, D.C. The company's still around. Then you were recruited, I guess, to go to Marriott. Is that right?
No, in between there, I created a private equity business. A little teeny one compared to the big behemoth that you're part of. At the time, this would have been in 1991. This was the early days of private equity generally, certainly real estate private equity. And our view was that there's going to be massive opportunity as a result of the displacement going on in the S&L crisis, just so much inadvertent ownership of real estate on the wrong people's balance sheets. And we wanted to get out and take advantage of that. So we did. So for 5 years, my partner and I went out and had a fabulous private equity business. We did, a lot of deals, probably, it seems like small numbers today, but probably $500 million of deals across the spectrum of hotels and office. Did a lot of tax-exempt multifamily in our fund, and had a lot of great partners, one of whom was Blackstone. And then got recruited, my partner and I, to go to what was then Host Marriott after doing that for 5 years.
Host Marriott was the real estate arm of Marriott Hotel. Marriott had split the company into two parts. One was the brand Marriott that operates the hotels and manages them. The other part was owned the real estate, right? And that was Host Marriott.
Yep. I came in as a COO, and I became the CEO within 4 years. My partner in our private equity business, Terry Golden, was CEO. I was COO. He retired in 4 years, and I took over as
All right,
CEO.
so you're running Host Marriott. You did a very good job, as I remember it.
I think
so. How did you come
so.
to Hilton?
I mentioned in my private equity days, I'd gotten to know the Blackstone guys, really well. John Schreiber then, who's since retired, but John Gray, particularly really well. Steve Shoresman a bit. And when I got to Host, as a result of that relationship and given their interest in the hotel space, we did a bunch of transactions with them. So while I had known them, I got to know them really well. And as a result of that relationship, I guess when they decided, in July, late June, early July of 2007, that they were going to buy Hilton, John Gray called and said, I've got the perfect job for you. We know you. We like you. We trust you. We think you've sort of trained your whole career to be able to run a company like this. We think there's a huge amount of upside and potential. This company's been grossly undermanaged, and you should come do it. And I said, what are you, crazy? I'm going to pick up my wife and my 6 little daughters at this time, and we're going to move to Beverly Hills, California. I famously said, well, we're going to be like the Beverly Hillbillies out, Right. I don't see the Nassettas on Rodeo Drive. But those that know John Gray know that he's very persuasive. And the truth is, as I step back from it, and as I talked to my wife, who was an equal partner in the decision, we realized how many chances in your life are you going to have where it's a counterparty like Blackstone, who you know really well, who you trust. It's a business that you know, but has massive opportunity, and it suits your skill set. And those things just don't come together that often. And so eventually I decided we would pick up and be the Beverly Hillbillies, and we moved.
So Hilton was a publicly traded company. Blackstone bought it for roughly $29 billion. Some people thought it was a pretty high price at the time. You come in to manage the large amount of debt and so forth, and you moved your 6 young daughters all the way out to California.
I did.
And then the Great Recession comes, and all of a sudden the debt from the leveraged buyout seems to be burdensome. Were you worried that the deal wasn't going to work at all and it might go bankrupt?
David, I slept like a baby. I slept for 2 hours. I woke up, cried, slept for another 2 hours, woke up and cried. Kidding. No, the truth is there were some tense moments at the beginning of the Great Recession, but we never lost faith. Like John and I, particularly as the two that sort of put our heart and soul into making this thing work, John Gray and I, we knew we had a really good strategy. We were building a world-class team. And, I'm a big believer in a steady hand on the wheel. What goes down will come up. Don't panic. If you've got a strategy, work the strategy, adapt it to the times, and you'll get to the other side. And we did.
So you don't have as much gray hair as I do, but did you get any gray hairs?
I might question that. I've got a lot.
Did you get any gray hairs from this experience?
I definitely did. But I found it, I definitely got more gray hairs, and I'm not going to say it didn't stress me out on occasion. But I love a challenge. I mean, the truth is, I had a really great job running Host, and I love the company, and the people, and the board was incredible to me. And so why did I leave? I wanted a bigger challenge and, something that was more global and needed fixing. And so the reality is the Great Recession, while it was hard and it was stressful, it was also an opportunity to sort of stretch myself and to, fix it and to really push myself to get to the other side.
So Blackstone ultimately injected some more money into the deal, and they bought some debt back at a discount. And the bottom line was they ultimately took it public, or you took it public, and it turned out to be one of the most successful, if not the most successful buyouts in history. I think Blackstone made about a $14 or $15 billion profit.
That's what I'm told.
And when you took the company public, you did it at a certain price, but today I think the price is up about 600%. The stock is up about 600%. So you must be pretty happy, right?
I think so. We did our job for Blackstone and their investors, and they made a great profit, out of what looked like a difficult setup during the Great Recession. And yeah, anybody that bought the stock when we went public and held it has done exceptionally well.
Are you happy doing this? You're going to do this for the foreseeable future?
And this business, I would still say, is like a coiled spring coming out of COVID particularly. So I feel like we just have more to do.
Now, your company was started more than 100 years ago, a little bit more than 100 years ago, by Conrad Hilton. He's famous for many things. He built this company, but I was told that one time he made a famous statement about the most important thing in the hotel business. Can you tell us what that was?
He did. I wasn't alive to see it, but he was quite famous in the time, and he ended up on the Johnny Carson show on more than one occasion. And at one point, as it goes, I've seen the clip, so it's not legend, Johnny Carson said, "All right, Connie," he went by Connie, "you're the biggest hotel man on earth. Could you just give everybody in the audience one piece of advice?" He said, "If I could give you one piece of advice, I would say, please keep your shower curtain inside the shower."
Because otherwise it was going to leak out and the water was going to damage the hotel.
Correct.
So do you ever commune with Conrad Hilton? Do you ever get any messages from heaven from him saying you're doing a good job protecting my name?
I haven't, but I do have his bust right next to my office.
Really?
When we moved out of Beverly Hills, we had all sorts of paraphernalia that that was related to the history of the company, most of which I sent to the Conrad Hilton Museum at the University of Houston, because I thought it would be great for them to catalog it and have it. The one thing I did keep was his bust, which I keep very close by my office. I did know Conrad personally. I did meet his son Baron, who ran the company for over 40 years, and was very close to his father. And they, at least talking to Baron, he was quite proud of what we had done with the company, and suggested to me Conrad would have been as well.
Well, Conrad Hilton was very famous and Baron Hilton was very famous, but honestly the most famous person with the last name Hilton is Paris Hilton.
Paris.
Is she involved in the company?
She had, more recently, we've been working with Paris on the marketing side of it. We're working with her. She just got married and she's on her honeymoon, and we're helping sponsor the honeymoon. And so we have been doing some work more recently.
When I was growing up in a blue-collar family, we couldn't afford to go to Hilton. Hilton was the ultimate brand in those days, and we were lucky if we could go to, say, a Holiday Inn or something like that. Over the years, Hilton name hasn't yet been seen as maybe as ultimately elite as Ritz-Carlton or Four Seasons. Is that a fair statement in some respects?
Yeah, it is, and by choice. If you go back 50 years ago, Hilton was probably the leading pioneering luxury brand on earth. But as time went on and as we learned that segmentation mattered in the business and that the customers had these different needs, we really tried purposefully to make Hilton a four-star brand to allow for other things above it.
So your ultimate luxury brand, is that Waldorf Astoria?
That's Waldorf Astoria. Our luxury brands are Waldorf Astoria, Conrad, and LXR. You're in a Conrad, as it turns out today, but the very highest end of luxury for us is Waldorf, then Conrad, and LXR is a collection of historic luxury hotels.
Now in New York City, there's the famous initial Waldorf Astoria, which has been under construction or rehabilitation for a few years. You don't own it, but you're going to manage it, I presume. Is it going to open in my lifetime?
Well, let me correct one thing. That is not the original Waldorf Astoria.
Oh,
the original Waldorf Astoria was put together as a consequence of the Astor, two members of the Astor family feuding that had two hotels that were on the site of what is today the Empire State Building. And the way they settled the feud was one hotel was the Waldorf, the other was the Astoria, and they settled the feud by connecting them with what they called Peacock Alley, and it became famously the Waldorf Astoria in New York. That was in the late 1800s. They ultimately sold it to what got redeveloped as the Empire State Building. And where the current Waldorf Astoria was built during the Great Depression. It opened in 1931. Okay. And is under massive redevelopment and should reopen as what I think will be the best luxury hotel in New York in 2023, with 400 rooms and about the same amount of high-end luxury apartments.
So there's another rumor going around about another Waldorf Astoria. It's rumored in Washington, D.C., where we are now, that the Trump Hotel which had its challenges, which has been reported and sold to somebody, and that you, Hilton, will manage it as a Waldorf Astoria. Can you comment on that?
I've read that same rumor, but no, I can't comment on that. I have a very strict rule. I'll comment when something is done. And so the rumors are justified in the sense that there's a lot of work and discussion going on, but nothing is done.
Now there's a new phenomenon that's now not that new called Airbnb.
What is that?
And when it came along, the hotel industry kind of shrugged it off a bit, but is it a real competitor to you, and are you going to be in that business?
I do not think it's a real competitor to us. So if you think about what we do, it's something different than what they do, and I think we coexist with them quite well. We deliver a high quality, consistent product with the amenities wrapped in service, with all the technology, loyalty, and people pay us generally a big premium for that because they want that level of consistent, high quality experience. What they do is something different. What they're doing is, by definition, can't have the consistency and the quality and the products and the amenities that are tailor fit because it's just something different. But it doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's satisfying a different kind of trip occasion. So if you look at the numbers, even pre-COVID, we were coexisting quite well. We were at the peak levels of performance at a time where they were growing leaps and bounds, and we weren't really seeing significant competitive threat as a result of it.
As an investor, should I be looking at the hotel lodging industry as a good area to invest in? I mean, your stock recently has gone to near all-time highs from very low point in time during the COVID period of time. You think there's a lot of growth left in lodging and hotel stocks?
You're one of the smartest investors on earth, so I'm not going to give you I'm a lowly hotel guy. I'll let you decide that. I think why the stocks have performed well is really quite simple. I think it's an underlying belief that the business broadly demand in the business in all segments will come back and will ultimately over time grow to be greater than it was before, which I believe. And I think in our case, why we've performed well is I think investors believe that the decisions we made, that we had a very good capital light business that was growing faster than anybody in the industry before. The decisions that we made during COVID put us in an even better position where when we get to the other side of it, we're a higher market share, higher growth, higher margin business. And the market, as you and I both know, as a result of a whole bunch of things in terms of fiscal policy and the like, is just looking further forward. And I think when people look forward 2 and 3 years, they like what they see in the industry, and I'd like to believe they really like what they see in terms of what we can deliver.
You've now been doing this about 14 years, if I count the numbers right, and you're 59 years old.
I am.
So have you thought maybe I should go do something else? I can't do anything better than I'm already doing. I've already turned this company around. I've made a lot of money for the investors, the shareholders, and yourself. Are you happy doing this? You're going to do this for the foreseeable future?
I'm going to do it for the foreseeable future. I love what I do, and the reality is we've accomplished a lot. As you described, we've made Blackstone a lot of money. We made our shareholders a lot of money. More importantly, we've grown the business, and we've been a huge engine of opportunity. If you think about all the jobs we've created around the world, all the communities we've made better places, all the ownership groups who we've helped grow their business, and having built a world-class culture, the opportunities we've created for upward mobility for people. And this business, I would still say, is like a coiled spring coming out of COVID particularly. So I feel like we just have more to do. My job's far from done.